The rain had turned the city into a dull wash of gray, blurring the sharp lines of buildings and soaking the pavement until it reflected the sky like cracked glass. Cars hissed past in the distance, their tires cutting through puddles, while people hurried along the sidewalks with collars turned up and eyes fixed forward. Evelyn Hart stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps, unmoving, as if her feet had forgotten how to carry her away. The stone building behind her felt heavier than ever, pressing its silence into her back. The hearing had lasted less than 20 minutes. Years of searching, months of paperwork, and all the fragile hope she'd allowed herself to feel had been dismissed with a few practiced sentences. No conclusive records, no legal proof, no further action recommended. The judge's voice had been calm, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. There was nothing left to appeal, nothing left to file. According to the system, the twins she had been searching for had never truly existed. Evelyn let out a slow breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding and tightened her grip on the strap of her handbag. Inside it were copies of birth certificates scorched at the edges, photographs she had scanned and rescanned until they blurred, and handwritten notes from late nights spent chasing rumors. All of it suddenly felt ridiculous, like props from a story no one else believed. She stepped down onto the wet sidewalk, heels clicking softly, and reached into her coat pocket for her phone. She wanted to call someone, anyone, but there was no one left who understood why this mattered so much. Most people had gently suggested she let it go years ago. You can't save ghosts, they'd said. You deserve a life of your own. Ma'am, the voice was quiet but firm, close enough that Evelyn flinched. She turned, instinctively bracing herself, and found a woman standing just beyond the edge of the courthouse awning. The woman looked to be in her late 50s or early 60s, though life had etched deeper lines into her face than age alone could explain. She wore a faded brown coat several sizes too large, sleeves frayed, and fingerless gloves pulled over thin hands. Damp strands of gray-streaked hair peeked out from beneath a knitted cap. Yes, Evelyn said, cautious but not unkind. The woman hesitated, eyes darting toward the courthouse doors and then back to Evelyn's face. I don't want money, she said quickly, as if anticipating dismissal. That's not why I stopped you. Evelyn nodded slowly. All right. The woman drew in a breath, her shoulders lifting beneath the heavy coat. Ma'am, those twins you've been looking for. They're in the orphanage on Willow Street. For a moment, the rain seemed to fall in silence. Evelyn stared at her, the words echoing without meaning, like a sentence in a foreign language. I'm sorry, she said finally. What did you say? The woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. I heard you inside. I was sitting in the back. I always come here when it rains. It's warm, and nobody bothers me. Her eyes sharpened with memory. You were talking about two babies. Twins, a boy and a girl. Born the same night as your sister. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs. She felt suddenly unsteady, as though the ground beneath her had shifted. You couldn't know that, she whispered. Those details weren't in the hearing. No, the woman agreed. But they were in your voice. And in the way you held those papers. She swallowed. And because I was there the night they were born. Evelyn's fingers tightened painfully around her phone. Where? She asked, barely able to get the word out. At St. Mary's, the woman replied. Before the fire. I was sleeping in the waiting room. I wasn't supposed to be there, but it was cold. Outside. She paused, eyes flickering with something like shame. I remember the alarms. The shouting. I remember the nurses carrying babies wrapped in blankets, running. Evelyn shook her head slowly. Everyone told me the twins didn't make it out. They said there was no record. No proof. That's what they tell people when paperwork burns, the woman said quietly. But babies don't vanish like ink. Someone took them out the back. I saw it. A man and a woman from social services. They said the mother was gone and no family had come forward. Evelyn's throat burned. I came forward, she said. I came the next morning. They told me I was too late. The woman nodded, because by then, they were already gone. Rain dripped steadily from the brim of the woman's cap. Evelyn searched her face, desperate for signs of a lie, a crack in the story that would protect her from hope. But all she saw was certainty mixed with regret. Why didn't you say anything? Evelyn asked. Why now? The woman looked down at her hands. Because people like me don't get asked questions. And when we talk, no one writes it down. She lifted her gaze again. But today I saw you walk out of that courtroom with the same look I had the night I lost everything. And I thought, maybe this time, someone would listen. Evelyn felt tears spill over, hot against the cold rain. She wiped them away angrily. You're saying you know where they are. After all this time. Yes, the woman said. Willow Street Children's Home. I passed by it for years. I saw them in the yard once, when they were little. Same eyes, same curls. Her voice trembled. I knew it was them. 1,000 questions pressed against Evelyn's lips, but one rose above the rest. Are they alive? She asked. The woman nodded firmly. They are. Something inside Evelyn broke open. The weight she had carried for 5 years, of guilt, of doubt, of unanswered questions, shifted into something sharp and bright and terrifying. Hope. She laughed once, a broken sound, then covered her mouth as sobs followed. Without fully thinking it through, she reached out and grasped the woman's cold hands. Come with me, she said. The woman stiffened. Where? To my car, Evelyn replied. And then to Willow Street. Right now. I don't. The woman glanced down at her soaked coat, her worn shoes. I don't belong in places like that. You belong wherever the truth is, Evelyn said, squeezing her hands. And I need you there. Please. For a long moment, the woman hesitated, torn between habit and possibility. Then she nodded once. All right, she said softly. As they walked toward the street together, rain still falling, Evelyn felt something unfamiliar settle into her chest. Not certainty, not yet, but the sense that the story she had been told for years was finally about to change. And whatever waited for her on Willow Street, she knew she would not face it alone. The orphanage on Willow Street sat behind an iron fence softened by ivy, its brick walls glowing faintly under yellow porch lights as dusk crept in. The rain had slowed to a mist by the time Evelyn parked the car, but her hands were still trembling on the steering wheel. For a moment, she simply sat there, staring at the building as if it might dissolve if she looked too hard. Beside her, the woman who had changed everything sat rigidly, clutching the hem of her coat, eyes fixed forward. This is it, Evelyn murmured. The woman nodded but didn't speak. Years of being invisible had taught her not to expect welcome, and the neat, well-lit building made her feel painfully out of place. When they stepped inside, warmth enveloped them immediately, along with the scent of clean floors and something faintly sweet, like baked apples. A middle-aged woman sat behind a desk near the entrance, glasses perched on the end of her nose as she looked up from her paperwork. Good evening, she said, her voice practiced but kind. Can I help you? Evelyn took a breath, steadying herself. I'm looking for 2 children, she said. Twins, a boy and a girl. They would be about 5 years old now. The receptionist's fingers paused on the keyboard. We have had several sets of twins over the years, she said carefully. Do you have names? Evelyn swallowed. Saying the names out loud felt like opening an old wound. Their names are Daniel and Rose, she said, the syllables trembling. They were born at St. Mary's Hospital the night of the fire. Something flickered across the receptionist's face, recognition, perhaps, or surprise. Please wait here, she said, standing. I need to check something. She disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps echoing. The silence that followed pressed in, thick and heavy. Evelyn paced the small lobby, rubbing her arms, while the homeless woman hovered near the door as if ready to escape at the first sign of trouble. You can sit, Evelyn said gently, gesturing to a nearby chair. The woman shook her head. I'll stand, she replied. I've been waiting my whole life. Standing feels right. Minutes passed, then more. Every sound made Evelyn's heart leap. The creak of floorboards, distant voices, a door opening and closing. She imagined 1,000 outcomes, most of them painful. What if the children had been adopted already? What if the names didn't match? What if this hope collapsed the moment it touched reality? Finally, footsteps approached again. The receptionist returned, accompanied by an older woman with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. Her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. Behind them, 2 small figures peeked around the corner. Evelyn's breath caught painfully in her chest. The boy stepped forward first, his dark curls bouncing slightly as he walked. He had a cautious seriousness about him, chin lifted in quiet defiance. The girl followed, her hand wrapped tightly around his, her eyes wide and curious, reflecting the light like polished stones. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to those 2 children. The caretaker knelt beside them. Daniel, Rose, she said softly, these ladies would like to meet you. The girl frowned slightly, studying Evelyn. Why? She asked. Evelyn dropped to her knees without realizing she was moving. The floor was cool beneath her, grounding her as emotion surged up her throat. Because I've been looking for you, she said, her voice breaking. For a very long time. The boy's eyes narrowed, searching her face. Are you our mom? Evelyn felt the question like a physical blow. No, she said gently. But I'm your aunt. Your mother was my sister. The caretaker inhaled sharply. "Evelyn," she said, as if tasting the name. "We've been waiting for someone like you." Tears streamed freely down Evelyn's face now. She laughed through them, an unsteady sound, and opened her arms. The children hesitated only a second before stepping into the embrace, their small bodies warm and solid against her. The moment they touched her, something deep inside her settled, like a door finally closing after years of wind and noise. Behind her, the homeless woman watched, hands trembling. Memories flooded her, the night of the fire, the cries of newborns, the choice to stay silent because no one had asked her to speak. She covered her mouth, tears spilling unchecked. "We tried to track down family," the caretaker said quietly. "But the records were incomplete. Every adoption inquiry fell through at the last moment. It was as if something kept stopping it." Evelyn looked up, still holding the twins. "Maybe something was waiting," she said. The caretaker smiled sadly. "Perhaps." Daniel pulled back slightly, studying Evelyn's face. "You look like us," he said matter-of-factly. Evelyn laughed again, this time with joy. "You look like your mother," she replied. She turned then, searching the room. "Where is she?" she asked, her voice thick. The homeless woman stood near the door, trying to make herself smaller, already preparing for the moment she would slip away unnoticed. "No," Evelyn said firmly, rising and walking toward her. She took the woman's hands again, ignoring the stares, ignoring the rules she no longer cared about. "You don't disappear now." The caretaker watched, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're the one," she said softly. "The witness." The woman nodded, tears tracing the deep lines of her face. "I just remembered," she said. "That's all." Evelyn shook her head. "You remembered when it mattered most." She turned to the caretaker. "These children are my family. I want to begin the process immediately. Whatever it takes." The caretaker's smile trembled. "I believe we can make that happen." Daniel tugged at Evelyn's sleeve. "Does this mean we get to go home?" he asked. Evelyn knelt again, meeting his gaze. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "It does." Rose wrapped her arms around Evelyn's neck. "I like you," she whispered. Evelyn closed her eyes, holding them both, feeling the weight and warmth of them, real and alive. She opened her eyes and looked at the woman who had started it all. "You're coming with us," Evelyn said. The woman blinked in surprise. "I don't have anywhere to go." "You do now," Evelyn replied. "You gave me back my family. Let me give you a place in it." For the first time in years, the woman didn't argue. She simply nodded, hope trembling in her chest. Outside, the rain finally stopped, and through the orphanage windows, the city lights shone a little brighter, as if even the world beyond Willow Street understood that something broken had been made whole at last.